What you are about to hear is the intellectual equivalent of a suppressed nuclear secret. For the next few minutes, we will navigate a maze of burned archives, state-sponsored amnesia, and psychological studies so damning they had to be buried, not by their creators, but by their own terrified successors. This is not just a video. We are exhuming forbidden research on female pair bonding, and by the end, you'll understand why they worked so hard to make you forget it ever existed. Before we begin, if you're serious about personal growth, if you seek not just comforting lies, but the raw, unfiltered truth, then my ebook, The Black Book of Human Nature, offers real value. It's a practical guide that uncovers the hidden truths of human behavior, equipping you with the tools to understand yourself and the world on a deeper level. The link is in the pinned comment. Picture a young man. Let's call him Alex. He's not you, but he holds fragments of you. He's intelligent, driven, and carries within him that ancient masculine blueprint to build, provide, and protect. He finds a woman, and for a time, the world seems to align. It's a symphony of shared laughter, quiet mornings, and a future painted in warm hues of mutual devotion. This is the joy we're all sold, the myth of the pair bond. It's a powerful, beautiful lie. For Alex, the collapse doesn't come with a bang, but with a slow, chilling silence. Their shared goals turn into her personal demands. His protective instinct is reinterpreted as controlling behavior. His dedication is met with a quiet, transactional evaluation. He is left bewildered, unable to grasp how everything changed so subtly, yet so profoundly. He holds the shattered fragments of a contract he never realized was one-sided. He studies the modern scripts, blaming himself for being too needy, not communicative enough. He failed to meet her needs. Yet deep within, in that primal core that modern therapy cannot reach, he knows this is a superficial diagnosis, masking a deeper, festering wound. An unsettling sense of unreliability gnaws at him, the very foundation of human connection he was taught to trust. His story isn't unique. It's a data point in a pattern that has been observed and documented, and systematically erased for over a century. His trauma is not his failure, but his first encounter with a forbidden truth. This revelation does not start in a therapist's office, but amid the ashes of a Berlin library in 1933. As Nazi brownshirts stacked books onto the pyres, their aim was not merely to destroy degenerate art, but to obliterate entire schools of thought. Among the flames consumed were the foundational texts of the Institute für Sexuelle Wissenschaft, the Institute for Sexology. The world watched as Magnus Hirschfeld's research and others' work were reduced to ashes, and many sighed in relief that such corrupt science was being wiped out. But that is the story they tell. The darker, more disturbing truth is that the Nazis, in their ruthless, pragmatic evil, were not merely destroyers of knowledge. They were its most discerning curators. They understood that knowledge equals power, and the most dangerous knowledge is that which you hold and your enemy does not. While the public fires burned brightly, a secret, silent operation was quietly unfolding behind the scenes. Under orders from Himmler's inner circle, SS officers discreetly packed and transported hundreds of files, research papers, and raw data from the Institute's vaults to a clandestine facility outside Munich. This was no random theft. It was a precise extraction. They aimed to salvage the most dangerous, predictive, and valuable research on human relational dynamics ever assembled. They understood that Hirschfeld and his colleagues in their quest to understand human sexuality, had uncovered the core mechanics of pair bonding, loyalty, and social cohesion. The Nazis' goal was clear: to weaponize this knowledge. The crown jewel of this stolen research was a longitudinal study so extensive and invasive it makes every modern social science project seem trivial. Codenamed Project Anchor, it began in the late 1920s. The researchers monitored over 10,000 married and cohabiting couples across Germany, representing all social classes and regions. They didn't depend on surveys or self-reports, the common flaw of modern psychology. Instead, they employed a network of field observers, cross-checked data with medical records, financial transactions, and in a chillingly prescient move, analyzed the content of private correspondence. They were creating a detailed, living map of the human heart. What they discovered shattered the Victorian ideal and the broader human myth of eternal romantic love. The data uncovered a harsh biological truth beneath the surface of culture and emotion. They identified what they called the Bindungsschwelle, the bonding threshold. This was not a measure of love or affection, but a concrete limit to a woman's natural pair bonding capacity, directly linked to her hypergamous drive. The research indicated that a woman's ability to form a truly lasting, lifelong bond with a male partner was not guaranteed. It was a delicate window, heavily reliant on a precise combination of external and internal factors. When a woman saw her partner as being at or near the height of his social and resource-providing potential compared to her options, the connection would solidify. It would transform into a deep loyalty and stability, what we might call the joy of genuine partnership. Yet, this state was fragile. The data showed that if a man's trajectory plateaued or declined, or if the woman's perception of her own market value rose, the bond would begin to break down at a biochemical level. The Nazis had uncovered a cold, ruthless evolutionary logic that dictated female loyalty. This is not a comforting truth. It feels alien, almost inhuman. But to grasp its true power, you must see it not as an abstract idea, but as a tangible reality. Imagine a middle-class couple in Frankfurt, 1930. Heinrich is a carpenter, a dependable man, skilled with his hands. His wife, Greta, married him for his stability and strength. For years, their life exemplifies German domesticity. But then the economy collapses. The Great Depression strikes, shattering their world. Heinrich's work suddenly stalls. Anxiety consumes him, and he becomes withdrawn and desperate. Though still the same man, his path has been broken. The project. Anchor field observers started to notice a change in Greta's demeanor. Once warm and caring, she now displayed a cold, pragmatic attitude. Her loyalty no longer seemed directed at Heinrich himself, but shifted toward the anchor, the provider. As the anchor began to drag along the seabed instead of holding firm, her biological and psychological programming instinctively sought a new, more secure harbor. The researchers observed a clear rise in what they labeled as mate-guarding anxiety among men whose social status had declined, alongside a corresponding increase in exploratory behavior among their wives. These women spent more time in social settings without their husbands and showed a new interest in men who still held status and resources. This phenomenon exemplified the Bindungsschwelle in action. It wasn't about morality. It was a ruthless evolutionary survival mechanism manifesting in a modern city. The Nazis recognized this dynamic and understood its profound influence. By mapping a population's bonding thresholds, they realized they could predict social stability with remarkable accuracy. You could manipulate loyalty to the state rather than the family, and identify those most likely to break under stress. This information was more prized than any new tank design. But the tale of forbidden research doesn't start or end with the Nazis. They were simply the most theatrical custodians of a truth that earlier minds had glimpsed and recoiled from. To find one of the most startling precursors, we must go further back, to the gas-lit drawing rooms of Victorian England, and the work of a man named Francis Galton. Galton, a cousin of Charles Darwin and the father of eugenics, was obsessed with measurement. He believed everything could be quantified, even beauty and character. In the 1870s, he conducted a strange and largely forgotten experiment at an international health exhibition. He set up an anthropometric laboratory where he measured thousands of people. But his most peculiar, and for our purposes, most relevant project was his attempt to create a beauty map of the British Isles. He would walk through cities with a piece of paper in his pocket and a pushpin, recording his observations. He secretly pricked the paper to tally the women he saw as beautiful, indifferent, or repulsive. It was a crude, monstrous exercise. Yet buried in his madness was a kernel of terrifying insight. Galton wasn't merely measuring beauty. He was unconsciously trying to map the distribution of the most potent currency in the female hypergamous arsenal. He observed with clinical detachment that the density of beautiful women appeared higher in wealthy urban centers and spa towns, places where high-status men gathered. It was as if the human flower was unconsciously blooming most vibrantly in the soil, where it was most likely to be pollinated by the right kind of bee. He had uncovered a non-conscious geographical expression of the mating market. His research and the eugenicist philosophy it inspired became so morally radioactive after World War II that the entire fields of biodemography and evolutionary psychology had to be surgically separated from their tainted origins, discarding the uncomfortable but valid data points, along with the racist and classist bathwater. This pattern, discovery, terror, and erasure, repeats itself with the chilling regularity of a pendulum. In the 1950s, during the peak of the American post-war marital boom, psychologist James McConnell at the University of Michigan made a discovery that should have revolutionized understanding of human relationships. McConnell was studying planarian flatworms, simple creatures capable of regenerating when cut in half. He trained them to associate a light with an electric shock, then ground up the trained worms and fed them to other worms. For a merchant ship owner, a man of coarse manners but undeniable upward momentum, Arthur is left shattered, not only physically but in spirit as well. He fought the French and emerged victorious, yet he could not defy the biological law that dictated his wife's loyalty. His story isn't one of a wicked woman. It's about a woman whose pair-bonding instinct was severed by the collapse of her partner's life path. This brutal, unspoken truth underpins every tale of a man returning from war, changed forever. The evidence isn't merely historical anecdote. It's embedded in the very demographics of our modern world, revealing a universal pattern of disconnection and loss. Consider a disturbing statistic from oncological psychology. Research consistently reveals a significant gender gap in abandonment rates when a spouse faces a serious illness. A pivotal study published in the journal Cancer in 2009 found that men are 6 times more likely to be divorced or abandoned after a diagnosis of severe illness, such as cancer or multiple sclerosis, than women. The abandonment rate when the wife was the patient was just 3%. But when the husband was the patient, it surged to 21%. Read that again. A man is 7 times more likely to be abandoned by his bedridden wife than a woman is to be left by her husband. Why? Because a serious illness in a man signals the ultimate trajectory killer. It's a violent, unmistakable declaration that his ability to provide, protect, and advance has come to a permanent, grinding halt. His value, within the hypergamous framework, drops to 0. The woman's pair bonding circuitry, wired for survival above all else, interprets this as a catastrophic system failure and initiates the process of severance. The hospital room transforms into a makeshift laboratory where forbidden research unfolds amidst tears and legal papers. This isn't a conspiracy. It's a pattern etched into the cold, hard data of human suffering that the mainstream refuses to interpret correctly, fearing the conclusion. If value is measured by trajectory, how is it truly communicated? Not through words. Words serve the conscious mind's currency, but the hypergamous impulse functions in the ancient, non-verbal language of the subconscious. It's here that we must explore the work of another suppressed figure, whose insights have been silenced and overlooked. Albert Morabian, a man whose groundbreaking research into non-verbal communication made him a pariah, emerged in the 1960s as a pioneer in understanding how we convey feelings and attitudes. His well-known, though often misunderstood, rule claimed that only % of communication is conveyed through words, 38% through tone of voice, and a remarkable 55% through body language. While the corporate world eagerly adopts his findings for sales seminars, they tend to overlook the deeper significance these insights hold for human mating behaviors. Morabian had successfully uncovered the transmission channel for the hypergamous signal, revealing how subtle cues influence social and romantic hierarchies. A woman does not judge a man's path by his business plan. She reads the raw, instinctive signals of his presence, his posture, the steady calmness of his gaze, the tone of his voice, the absence of fidgeting, and the slow, deliberate pace of his movements. These are the genuine indicators of his inner state, and consequently, his standing in the hierarchy. A man truly on a powerful trajectory moves with quiet, unwavering confidence. He does not seek approval. He grants his attention. This is what the red pill community often calls frame, the subconscious, energetic boundary a man maintains that shapes his reality on his terms. When a man's frame is strong, it projects a high-value trajectory, causing the woman's pair-bonding instinct to lock in. Conversely, when his frame is weak, when he seeks validation, his voice wavers and his shoulders slump, he signals a failing trajectory, and the bond begins to weaken. This explains why a man can be earning more than ever. Yet if he comes home seeking emotional reassurance after a bad day, his weakened frame undermines the connection. He senses her retreat. It's not the money, it's the frame. In that instant, he has conveyed a dissent. This leads us to the most empowering, and for the modern man, the most challenging conclusion of the forbidden research. The strength and durability of the pair bond are not mainly dictated by the woman. They are determined by the man. He holds the key. His mission, his purpose, and his unwavering dedication to his own ascent are the only forces that keep the entire structure intact. This is the ultimate refutation of the blue pill myth that relationships are a 50-50 partnership based on mutual emotional effort. That idea is the language of collapse. The forbidden research reveals a different reality, a 100-0 dynamic. The man must be fully committed to his own path, his own value, his own mission, one that exists independently of the woman, the relationship, or the family. By doing so, he creates a gravitational field of stability and security. The woman, in turn, is able to give her loyalty completely, nurturing and supporting the relationship with her full devotion. And support because the foundation of his worth remains unshakable. Her 0% isn't a reflection of a lack of effort. It's the result of not needing to be the man, not having to control his emotional state, and being able to exist within the sanctuary his purpose provides. This realization is the inspiration waiting on the other side of the shock. It's the understanding that your pain, trauma, and confusion are not a life sentence. They are a diagnosis, and the remedy isn't to change her, to beg her, or to negotiate with her. The solution is to become the man whose trajectory is so compelling that her biological instinct cannot help but commit for life. Picture two possible futures for Alex. In the first, he buys into the blue pill lie. He thinks the issue is his communication skills. He attends therapy, learns to articulate his needs, and attempts to be more vulnerable and emotionally open. He negotiates for the small bits of affection he once received effortlessly. With each tearful talk, each desperate plea for understanding, he projects an increasingly feeble and uncertain trajectory. He is a ship captain, pleading with the sea to calm, to be less stormy. But the storm is inevitable. Her respect for him dissolves, her attraction fades, and their bond shatters completely. He is left hollow, convinced he is fundamentally broken. Now imagine a second future. In his despair, Alex stumbles upon forbidden research. The shock is electric, transforming his entire understanding of his suffering. He realizes his pain was not his fault, but his responsibility. He ceases to focus on her, and instead turns his gaze inward. He reclaims his body, reclaiming himself, pushing himself in the gym until he sees a stranger staring back in the mirror, a stranger with calm eyes and quiet confidence. He rekindles a long-forgotten dream of starting his own business, channeling his focus and pain into the work. He stops reporting his day to her and begins simply living it. He is no longer reactive to her moods, becoming the anchor in his own storm. At first, she may test him, may resist the change. But as his frame solidifies, as his trajectory becomes clear in his posture, his voice, his actions, a subtle shift occurs. The criticism ceases. The coldness begins to melt away. The woman he loved starts to reappear. Not because he begged her, but because his worth has compelled her to. He didn't mend the relationship. He made himself worthy of a bond that wouldn't break. He became the master of the biological lock and key. This is the final suppressed truth. The secret to female loyalty isn't about women. It's about you. The Nazis buried it because they aimed to control populations, not to free men. The post-war academics buried it because it was an inconvenient truth that shattered their illusion of the blank slate. The entire modern self-help industry conceals it because it cannot be turned into a simple 10-step formula. It is a lifelong, brutal, and glorious pursuit. It embodies the black pill philosophy, not as a message of despair, but as a call to action. It is the acceptance of a cold, harsh reality as the foundation for genuine empowerment. The pain you experienced was the death of the boy who still believed in fairy tales. The man who stays has been entrusted with the maps to a reality that few dare to face. You now understand what was wiped away. You now comprehend why it was erased. And you possess the key they once tried to destroy. The question is no longer what she will do. It's what you will create with the forbidden knowledge that is now, at last, in your hands.